The Walk. Black. The kind of all-consuming dark that forced the imagination to conjure phantasms just to stave off madness. I heard the clinking of chains long before they were snapped taut, and a large wooden portcullis creaked and began to move. 3 large clangs, dense, heavy metal, unlocked the outer doors. It had been days since I had seen the sun. Orange-yellow burned my eyes as it squeezed through the widening wound, but I did not look away. I embraced the pain, savored it so that I could remember it when I returned it tenfold. The smell of old rotted wood replaced the stench of musky and damp stone as the bars of the gate crawled past. Alternating bands of light and dark were a clock of sorts, counting down to the moment of execution. The outer doors crossed the halfway point, and a wall of throat-searing heat washed in, carrying the stench of sun-baked urine, a sea of bird squat and fresh-spilled blood. As the way cleared, a large man, more scar than skin, undid my shackles, shoved a rusty, dull sword in my arms, and kicked me out onto the sand. A wave of booze slammed into me, making my bones rattle and my heart pound. The arena was huge. Thousands filled the stands, and if they all rushed the sands, there would still be room to dance. To the left, the sand gave way to steel grates housing spearmen who waited to surprise unsuspecting fools. To the right, a series of ramps, stairs, and walls, allowing tactics and strategy to play a role in the spectacle. On the far side of the arena was a mock castle where teams of the damned could compete in games of defeat and defend. And directly in the center of the battlefield, hard to see with the sand reflecting the blazing sun, stood 3 heroes, gladiators scripted to win the day's battle. I looked out at the crowd, thousands of dirty, malnutritioned faces cheering or jeering, booing and drinking, all lusting for blood. I could have endorsed their barbaric ways. The life of a gladiator appealed to me. The simplicity of drink, fight, win was seductive to all my kind. However, to feed this infernal machine, thinking, reasoning beings had their lives destroyed, their kith and kin conquered and killed, or worse, sold into this slavery to appease the mob. Curious thing about the miserable. Grant them the slightest reprieve from their wretched lives, and they will, for a time, forgive you, the very being who made their lives this way. Broken fools. I have made ending slavery when and wherever I find it my next primordius, my life mission that I will cease when I am dead and not a moment before. Alas, in so many lands across this world, this insidious practice is all social, economic, and religious dogma. Sadly, I cannot punch a society hard enough to change its mind, so I will do the next best thing. You want blood? I shout to the mob. Their response shakes the earth. Mouths opened in animal roars until even thick-lipped Nubians appear lipless. I could feel the sand jump and rain on my toes. They wanted blood, and I would give them so much blood it would make a miscarriage look like a baptism. I looked down at my feet. Ugh, I hate sandals. I was not expected to last long, so, along with a 4-foot strip of cloth that was given to secure my genitals, I guess they were a generosity. I stepped forward, and the heroes match my stride. The crowd starts chanting, "Fight! Fight! Fight! Fight!" I take the measure of my competition. The one in the middle leading the pack wore bright brass armor with a full-face helmet. No telling how many he had to kill to earn that. An 8-foot winged spear and a bladed shield told me he was sadistic. He liked to wound his opponent so he could play to the crowd, draw out the execution. A coward, but their champion. He is the one I would do my work on. The large one on the left wore leather armor and dragged a war hammer behind him, a clever tactic to show how heavy it was. for a dumb brute. The small one on the right carried 2 short swords in his hands, a long sword on his back and various daggers and blacksmith tools on his person. This one was a fighter. I would destroy him utterly. As we close, I remember the sword in my hands. I toss it aside. The crowd goes nuts. Hollering and mocking laughter filled the stadium, the harmony jostling atop the thunderous stomping of feet. The champions wasted no time. The spearman feinted a thrust and fell back, making room for the brute to swing his massive hammer, and the bladesmith to circle around and flank me. I catch the hammer and kick his balls into his throat. Then I take his hammer and drive his head deep into his chest cavity. The crowd winces and releases a collective ooh, and I move on before his body falls. The champion draws my attention, forcing me to open my back to the savage by banging his spear against his shield and issuing a challenge. "Fellow gladiator, we, condemned to die upon the sacred sands." I rush him and lay all 200 pounds of me behind the punch, crushing his helmet into his face. I can hear his teeth rattle around inside the metal. He drops like a corpse. I turn just as the bladesmith launches his attack. I slap his weapons aside and break his arm at the elbow. He screams but stays conscious. Good. I go to work. I snap both wrists. I tear his Achilles tendon off his heel and fold his knee back until it stops making that ripping noise. Next, I pull his fingers apart until I can see the bones in his hands. He never stops screaming. I could kill him. I do not. I want them to hear. Back to their champion. The crowd was quiet now, frighteningly graveyard quiet. Here in the hinterland, slaves, slavers, and inbred rubes have no knowledge of psionics. I use that against them. Subtly, I link the minds of everyone in that arena. Not to me, to him, to their champion. I wake him. They feel his pain and fear and confusion. Then they feel his petrifying terror as he recognizes my face and where he is. I peel his helmet off, showing them his ruined face. More was hanging off in bloody scraps than attached to his skull. Blood was dark and thick and still flowing. Using my psionic hand, I reach into his chest and grab a cluster of his central nervous system. With the slightest twist, I flood his body with excruciation. I feel the crowd recoil. My skin raised and pimpled as hundreds in the stands emptied their stomachs, puking on everything, the floors, themselves, each other. Waves and pulses of agony that simulated broken bones, flayed flesh, childhood nightmares, and deep unending pool of starvation sucked them into its maw. They weep and bawl and cry out, and I only twist harder. Some try to flee, stumbling and flailing as they fall pain-blind, and their limbs disobey their commands. It takes minutes to finally snuff out his life. They stay with me. Against their wishes, they stay with me until his light blows out. I stand, proud, victorious, and I shout to the mob one last time, "Have you had your fill?" There was nothing but retching and weeping, and the whisper of the weary wind. "Send me another! I will drown this land in blood to earn your love!" No one clapped. No one spoke. I cheered myself as I left the sacred sands. And once I was back in that dank, oppressive hall, I heard the stands somberly empty. I wonder who will attend my next match.